on full-fledged in career adults. So I think reaching out, maybe training students to help these other students who might be struggling, offering things in multiple languages, language barriers, that's a huge one. A lot of students who are first generation Americans as well, it's on their backs to figure out all these financial terms, all this jargon that they might not understand because their family might not understand it. So just reaching down to the students, getting on their level through students or through their own language, I think would be the most effective way to do this.
Thank you, Michelle, for sharing that. I see Amy, you have your hand raised. Go ahead, add to the conversation.
Yeah, so I don't know who else, but my story is different. I actually had to ask my little sister on how to do tap because I'm gonna share a little bit of my story. I'm a dreamer. I'm a DACA recipient and I did not get any financial aid for years I was paying out of pocket. And finally, when they passed the law that dreamers could get TAP, I applied in around March or April of 2019. And I had to ask my little sister, who does get financial aid and TAP and everything, hey, what's this? What's that? Like, I don't understand this. So funny thing is, it was flipped. Usually I'm the one giving her information. Now she was the one giving me information. So with my little sister, she usually got her TAP or anything like that quickly, maybe in a couple of months or right before school started. So when I applied in April of 2019, I'm thinking, oh, okay, my tuition might be paid, at least it's like 6 months after or whatever. I was thinking maybe before the year was over. With HES, I feel like, especially because of the pandemic that hit, I wish that HES has sent more info like, hey guys, send us emails like, I know you guys are waiting. What I had to do was basically, I don't know, I kind of got lucky. I got different numbers, and basically with those different numbers and different people working within HESC, it was like, hey guys, yeah, we're gonna send the money. But the thing is that, what if I didn't get those numbers? How would have I gotten that information? It told me to accept my TAP, but I knew how much I was getting and how much will be covered, but I never knew when I was receiving it. So I was, to be honest, before it finally went through, thank God. But before that, I'm like, wow, I have to now pay $7,000 out of pocket for, again. I just wish there was more communication with dreamers, because we never have been through this process. There's people who have been doing it for years. And technically, we're the first, whoever is doing this is the first recipient. So another reason I wanted to be on this panel so bad is because the next, I wouldn't say generation, of the people behind us, I don't want that problem. Like, I was in a panic, like, how I'm gonna pay $7,000? Like, I don't even have a full-time job yet. So I was just wondering, like, what's the next steps that they can make it better? Because I was kind of, like I said, in a panic. We're already in a pandemic, and I'm now panicking about tuition.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's one thing that I wish there was, they had more communication. Because if I hadn't called I called last month and they said, yeah, we're now distributing the money. And so what if I didn't call, or what if I didn't, decide to look on my CUNY first and know that, hey, I got the money? Nobody notified me about anything. So if it wasn't for that domino effect of me calling and me checking my CUNY first, I would have never known. So, wow. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Amy, for sharing that. And also congratulations on graduating.
Thank you.
Salute to you, because the temerity and the resilience and just the determination to get a degree, especially in a political climate where it wasn't really conducive to doing that. And just sharing your story, thank you. It makes me, as personally, want to level up my game and whatever obstacles that I'm facing, like, be like Amy, get your stuff done. So thank you for sharing your insight. And Bianca was so great to give me a little bit of backstory as to what you had to overcome. And it is no small feat to have to finance a higher education out of pocket. So thank you all with the hand claps. I appreciate that. You guys are Zoom aficionados. Just to go back to what Jessica and Michelle were saying, in regards to the FAFSA, are you more so wanting to know how to fill it out, or is there like, are you curious as to know how much you're going to get? What about the financial aid process did you find most difficult? That you felt like if I could get resolution to this, or this is what I don't understand. I think Amy alluded to that earlier in terms of the numbers. So is it that you need someone to walk you through that because it's such an arduous document, the FAFSA is, or is it that, okay, I filled it out. How do I know how much I'm going to get so I can plan accordingly?
Personally,
Michelle?
I think it's a little bit of both. I found the language very confusing. My mom's also in college, and I had to sit down and help her and explain, okay, they want this part of this tax document from 2 years ago. And like that was figuring that out, filling out my FAFSA for the first time. I was a kid, like I didn't know how to read a tax document. Like I had no idea. So I think just the language and just having things laid out more clearly, even if it's just pictures, would be like very helpful. And also, I also agree that not knowing exactly how much you're going to get, because I think the EFC, I believe it's called, is a little bit disillusioning because they saw like my family was, I'll be frank, we're low income. So we saw an EFC that was relatively low compared to like other students, but I still had to pay. I had to take out loans. My college wasn't fully funded. And that was a little bit confusing to both my family and myself. They're like, oh, well, your EFC is 0. Why are you still paying to go to school? So it just explaining things like that, and even having a process that explains to students, okay, yes, this is your EFC. This is what this means, but this isn't necessarily what you're going to pay. This is probably more realistically what you're going to pay based off of what school you're going to.
Okay.
Yeah, and if I can
go on.
just chime into what Michelle said, that I think that's important as well. Many students think, oh, okay, like I'm eligible for financial aid. Yes, okay, I'm not gonna have to pay anything for college. And that's not the case. And I think it's all about how the communication and the information is articulated. I'm not gonna lie, I've been honestly reading HESC documents and just the financial aid documents it's confusing. Like if you are giving it to just a person, just a student to read, going to the financial aid office, there is no way that student is walking out of there grasping that. If they tell you they understand, they're just so overwhelmed to the point where they don't want to ask. The documents is confusing. Understanding TAP, very confusing. And I think we need to make the jargon digestible, a lot of visuals, especially during these times where students can't go to that professor they always go to that helps them, or this office of support services on their campus that's always there that they always go to help them get the information that they need. Because, for example, the tax documents, if you don't know, you won't know which documents to submit. Then some students may think, oh, well, I submitted everything. No, you were missing this, and this. They don't know why there's a holdup. And then I've heard that happen to a lot of students. And then the communication is that they're constantly calling HESC. And if they don't get a hold of somebody, they're just not sure where to go, what to do, what is the next steps. And now they just end up saying, okay, well, I'm not eligible for tuition, financial aid. And then that's how students get discouraged. They won't reapply for financial aid. And that process scares many students away. Many students get scared away and they decide, well, I'm not dealing with financial aid anymore. This is too much for me. I don't want to even deal with this anymore, even though these are funds that are here to help that student. Yeah. And how do we change that? We need to over communicate. We need to overly email. The jargon needs to be very clear, simple info sessions. And I know HESC has done some, but even doing more. What is TAP? What does this mean for you? How should you plan this out? It's time to reapply for TAP. please be aware of these documents, giving students reminders months in advance. Please be on the lookout for these documents. Make sure you ask your parents for X, Y, and Z. This is what you'll need. Same thing for FAFSA. And I also tell my institution to do the same. Our Office of Enrollment and Academic Affairs. I also, because it's not just obviously the agency's job, our institutions need to be pushing out this information in a digestible way as well. But I also let them know it's also important. You all have to be in partnership with HESC and overly communicating with our students. Because I'll be honest with you, many students are confused, many students are overwhelmed. They're just like, I don't understand. And then the rising cost of tuition is just, they think that, okay, well, we are low income. How come like, this is how much I'm only getting? Where are the support services? Where do I go? And many students are very discouraged. And I would say in this pandemic now, the communication of trying to speak with their financial aid office is very hard. And it's slowed down a lot. And I think that has created an increase. And we may see some students start the application, not finish. And it's very, very trying for our students. And the information has to be a lot more digestible. Like for me, I understand how TAP works, not because I have it, but I spent 3 years in student leadership. It's forced me to know how this works when we go advocate for our students. And I finally, like this year, I finally understand everything I need to know about FAFSA, Pell, and TAP. And it took me a long time to understand all the nuances and all the little policies. So I can just imagine the general population of students who don't have that support and understanding how, financial aid works.
That is a very cogent point, and I love what Michelle said in the chat. She said, and this is very common, especially with EOP students who require additional documentation and auditing. So Michelle, Giovanni, that's great insight. I see Kendra has her hand raised. Kendra, would you like to piggyback or expound on what your fellow panelists said as well?
Yes, for sure. I just wanted to echo the parts where Giovanni said we really need to really let students know like what TAP affects, because I feel like a lot of students, especially if like you're an Excelsior recipient, didn't know that like, if you didn't fill out your TAP, then your Excelsior awards would be held up. And that's exactly what happened to me last year when I was a senior at U Buffalo. So I guess there was an error when I was filling out my FAFSA. And this happened to many students at my school. I'm not really sure how it happened system-wide, but I guess there was like some error in the system where after you filled out your FAFSA, the TAP window didn't come up. And usually like every year, the window would come up after you completed your FAFSA. And because of that error, that held up a lot of state aid for so many students. And I almost wasn't going to be able to receive my degree because I had to hold on my account all year long because, my tuition wasn't paid. And I just didn't understand what was wrong because I wasn't being notified. I didn't understand how TAP affected Excelsior because, I mean, like now in hindsight, it's like, yeah, that's state aid, but like when you're a senior, when you're in the midst of a school year, you're focusing on school, work, and anything else that you're working on. So communication and just educating students. And again, simplifying the jargon is honestly one of the most crucial things when it comes to, making sure students and parents and families like really understand how these processes work.
Thank you for sharing that, Kendra. That's really insightful. Here at HASC, I'm on the communications and outreach team, and we've been trying to develop toolkits and other resources that can really break down what you call and what truly is jargon. And I know when I started at HASC a few months ago, I had to learn quickly, and I found it also a little bit of a task to sort of digest these complicated terminologies, and I'm not in school. And I also remember being in undergrad and having had some frustrating experiences as well, but fortunately enough was not in a precarious financial situation where obtaining my degree, it wasn't held hostage, for lack of a better term. But I wanted to also, based on what you all have been saying, in terms of communications and over communicating, what type of media do you all find most useful for self-help, especially in this pandemic? I know you all have said your institutions have been a little bit derelict in getting the information to you. So you're relying on sort of self-troubleshooting. So what type of media can HESC sort of put more energy towards that your student body population tends to glean more information? Is it video? Is it pictures? Is it text? Anyone can take up that and just sort of expound.
I would say video is helpful.
I'm sorry, Giovanni. I think I saw Amy raise her hand.
Oh.
I'm right before you spoke, Giovanni. Amy had raised her
It's
hand,
okay.
and you can go right back, Giovanni. But Amy, go ahead and speak. Thank you.
I was gonna say that like doing videos, like she was about to say, and also like text message. Like I get text messages a lot from my current college, and like it really helps me because I'm just like, because emails like after a while it just it's cluttered and it's like you never see it anymore. So it's like a text message, like it's kind of good, like a notification, whatever. Because also like the thing is with email, like even though like people send things through a lot with email, like things get lost after a while because then you know what I mean, like you don't see it and then it's gone forever. You can't look back. You don't remember what day was emailed. You remember nothing. But like if they put up a system where you can say, oh, do you want to get text notifications?
Got it. Do you all utilize any of our social media platforms? Like, have you seen us on, are you following us on any of these platforms? Michelle, you're shaking your head. No. Jessica's like, no. Okay, got it. So when you're primarily receiving information from HESC, you're doing so either by email, or are you on your own accord jumping on our website and looking at information? HESC has an Instagram. I have to look into that, Michelle. But I know we have a social media platform. I'm not positive. If Angela's still on the call, maybe she can let me know. Amy,
Yeah, hi.
Hi, Angela.
We are not utilizing Instagram right now.
Okay. No,
She
we're
said
not.
social media, and I was just like,
That's the first thing you think
social
about.
media? Yeah, no, I primarily get notifications from HESC through email, but as Amy said, I get so many emails, probably a minimum of 200 a day between like my jobs and other stuff. I see it and I'm like, oh, that email. And then I completely slips my mind. And then it's middle of March and I still haven't filled out my financial aid documents or missed the thing from HESC that said, hey, your Excelsior is being held up. And I think students in general feel like they get bombarded from emails. A lot of students pay more attention to text, social media. Videos are wonderful. If I'm confused about something, I Google it. I'm just like, what's this? How do I do this? And usually pull up the first YouTube video that I see that's under 2 minutes, and usually it resolves my problem. So even if you guys had like a YouTube channel and you guys did short, I think is the key word too, short videos, that would be effective.
What about an app? Would you all consider using an app? You would download the HESC app. Okay, Jessica, you're sort of so on that. Amy, you nodding your head. Michelle, so. Okay. No, this is really great. Go ahead, Michelle.
If it's easy to use, user friendly, and has like good information on it, I feel like students would utilize it. But if they looked at reviews and saw that it was hard to use or like glitchy, they probably wouldn't.
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead, Giovanni.
I'm not sure if I missed. Does HESC have an Instagram? I know you all have a Twitter because I just looked it up. I would say use Instagram. It doesn't hurt to try. Put simple infographics. A lot of people are on social media. Universities use Instagram, so I think HESC could try to use that. I think it'll be helpful. It's a different approach. And also, like Amy mentioned, texting this number, receiving updates. Let's say someone doesn't use social media, they have another avenue to stay connected with you all aside from emails. That's my recommendation.
Okay. I'm sorry, Michelle, you put something in the chat. What's SGAs? Pardon me if I don't understand.
Student government associations.
Thank you. Got it. Yeah, so you've been working on infographics internally here is at HESC. So I think right now it'll just be about how we're going to disseminate that to you all. But I appreciate the feedback. And I see that we are coming closer to a part of our agenda where we'll transition to you all asking us questions. But I think lastly, I would say, what would you all say are 1 to 2 things that cause students to struggle with entering college or earning a degree? Because we understand that there's so much more that goes into achieving academic success and completing a degree, but what would you all sort of isolate as the 1 to 2 things that have been obstacles for you to really surmount, and perhaps how can HESC help in you all being successful in that?
Personally, I would say finding a community was very difficult, like finding friends, finding support. Once I got it, it was great, but that initial like couple months when I entered college and didn't have that was very difficult. Also, again, coming from a low income family, being first gen, finances were definitely difficult, figuring out how I was going to be able to afford to stay in school, making decisions based off of whether or not I was going to afford this or be able to afford this once I get my degree.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think those are really great points. And I think another thing that I've always advocated for is creating an alumni network so that students are able to really connect with people who may have the same background as them, especially if they're trying to switch careers. So, for example, I initially was going through the more academic route. And so then I decided that I wanted to try something else new, which was within finance. And then I realized I didn't know anyone in it. Nobody in my family knew anything about finance. Like all they thought about was like banks and stuff like that. Again, I am from Ecuador and I was born there. And so it's very different, the systems. And so I think that would be very helpful if students are able to connect with people that have similar backgrounds as them, because they understand what it takes to get there and to the position that they are now. And so I think, again, that alumni network is really helpful. And I've seen that from my own position as outreach chair of the HOP and EOP ambassadors here at Cornell. We've seen that a lot of students want that alumni connection and network because that gives them the confidence and ability to really expand their horizons and really, try out different things that they probably didn't think was a route that they could go on. So I think that would be super helpful.
Thank you, Jessica. It's wonderful insight. Giovanni?
I would say support services on campus. Food insecurity, housing insecurity, mental health resources are extremely big. And I think without those, having adequate services like that can make it or break a student's college career. I've have seen students who've didn't have those resources and they haven't gone back to college ever since. And that's a huge thing that students need, especially during this time. Not everybody has a strong family support or friends, or like Michelle mentioned, when you're first getting into college, that rocky first start. And then I would say the rising cost of higher education is extremely expensive, very, very expensive. And it is only getting even more expensive. And we have students who are working 4 jobs and they're doing stuff on their campus, and they're trying to be a student and maintaining GPAs to keep scholarships. And it is a lot for students. And the students who make it out of it, I would say, are remarkable students, but all students are remarkable. And they do put themselves through a lot. And I don't think it should be that way. And we are now seeing a crisis of the increase of higher education, but also support services, mental health resources. I don't know for SUNY, but for CUNY, not everywhere you go in CUNY, you're having mental health resources fully available, as available as a student would need. And when students need those help and they have nowhere to turn to, what do they do? And I've seen many students walk away from college because of that. And I would say those are really 2 huge, very huge issues that are affecting our students, and predominantly, you know, the students of color and Black students in higher education at CUNY, I'm speaking for CUNY, are affected at many different rates. And those issues are affecting our students a lot.
Thank you for expanding on that, Giovanni, especially when it comes to mental health issues, food insecurity, as well as housing needs. I'm sorry, I see Michelle here. She quoted mental health resources across uni. Yes, are overworked and underfunded. I appreciate that comment. I'm curious to know, Giovanni, what CUNY institution do you attend?
I go to New York City College of Technology, so that's
Okay.
downtown Brooklyn.
Downtown Brooklyn. Got it. Okay, so how much support has the institution provided in regards to accessing or providing for students who are dealing with food insecurity and also housing needs? I know that some colleges actually have on-campus food banks, but you're saying that this might have been severely impacted in the pandemic and students might not have had the access that they once did.
Yeah, I would say there are resources. We have counseling resources, but then when you have a student, for example, I know a student at CCNY, the amount of sessions are maxed out at their counseling office on their campus. Where do they go? Sometimes those counseling services, those counseling the services they have are appointment 2, 3. Where else do they go? You have, for example, on my campus, it was our student government association that had to create a pop-up food pantry so we can get one on campus, because we kept hearing the tug of war of, oh, well, there's not enough space on campus. Oh, this, that, and the third. So we partnered up with local food banks to do outreach, food outreach to students in our community from our campus. And I believe in this semester, towards the end of the semester, we should be having a physical pantry. But that's the scenario across CUNY. We are underfunded, and we talk about the expansion of these programs and services, and it's always we're underfunded. It's always we invest here, we can't invest there, and it hurts our students. And then you have the constant increasing of tuition, constantly going. Students are out of jobs, and it is now just a full crisis. And this is not just happening now. I've been at CUNY for 3 years. This is, I think, the pandemic has heightened what we're seeing. It has pushed things to the surface. When the pandemic started, there were some CUNY bathrooms that didn't have hot water or soap. And these are public higher education institutions. And to be in a pandemic, I remember in March where there's no soap or no hot water. This is a public higher education institution. So these are issues that are not happening just because of COVID, but this has been systemically, it's a continuation of things that are affecting the institutions.
Thank you, Giovanni. Kendra, I saw that your hand was raised up earlier. If you still want to jump in and contribute, by all means. If not, no worries.
Sorry, let me just recollect my thoughts real quick. Okay, yeah. So I wanted to touch on a little bit on the mental health aspect, and how like many institutions are lacking in mental health resources. But I kind of want to speak from a perspective of like a first generation student of color, specifically being a Black woman. When it comes to mental health and entering like a predominantly white institution, like a lot of students do face like imposter syndrome. And then when sometimes when there are barriers to like receiving counseling, sometimes when you do get your foot in the door, you're paired with a counselor who can't necessarily relate to your experiences in the classroom, your cultural experiences, your background. And a lot of times if you do have like, if there is like a language barrier, that's another obstacle that you kind of have to overcome as well. So I think that when like we talk about providing more mental health resources, we need to be a lot very specific especially when it comes to making sure we're advocating for like, you know, students from like more marginalized experiences and students who are like very underrepresented in different institutions, and providing them with the care that they need as well, without trying to do like a one size fit all approach when it comes to mental health. That's all I want to say.
No, that's a really cogent point, and one that is very much needed. And I thank you so much for speaking on that. It looks like we are coming to an end with our conversation. I want to honor you all's time. If you all have any last comments or questions, feel free to share it now, or you can always email me. You all have my email address. It's adobe.aguaja@hesc.ny.gov. I can also put it in the chat. But I thank you all so much for taking the time to give us all this insight. I know I've learned a lot. I know my colleagues, I speak on behalf of them, that they've learned a lot. You all being vulnerable and transparent with your circumstances and the challenges and obstacles that you've overcome is inspirational. And it also informs our policy making decisions moving forward. So thank you all so much for coming and joining the conversation. But I'm gonna leave time. We have about 3 to 5 more minutes before we're out of time. So if you have any last minute comments or questions that you think are pertinent to the conversation and you want our staff to know and take back with us at the end of this call, please, by all means, the floor is yours, open, and you can share.
I have a question.
Yes, Giovanni.
You probably see that I have a lot of questions.
No, I love your contribution, all of you. It's been amazing. So please.
I think in education, we're just seeing as a whole, and just socially, economically, in just many different aspects, we are seeing disparities, of course, in terms of lower income students. They're predominantly people of color, Black students. What is HESC's approach in terms of closing that gap in terms of the disparities of those students from those particular communities, making sure there's intentional approach and efforts, reaching those communities of color, making sure that they have the resources that they have, their families, are aware of HESC. They understand this is the resources we provide. This agency is here to help you and your family get your colleagues through college. I kind of know what role is HESC playing in terms of racial justice, understanding and social justice, and understanding there are disparities. And I think Kendra alluded to it before. We cannot address issues as one size fits all. There are many students who come from many different communities that go through different experiences. And how is HESC tackling those communities? What is their plan? Or if you have not yet, are you all thinking of a plan to target those students? Because it can't be a one size fits all type of thing.
That's a really great question, Giovanni, and one that I'm not sure I have a solid answer for you. I will tell you that, for example, the passage of the DREAM Act as well as the Excelsior Fellowship was, I think, monumental in terms of providing DACA recipients access to higher education, also allowing even those who are sort of in that middle that you don't necessarily qualify for the type of financial aid that you would need to pursue higher education, but at the same time, you're not poor enough or disenfranchised enough to not get it. So the passage of the Excelsior as well as the DREAM Act, I think, helped to catapult or sort of open up more doors for people who have been disenfranchised. But I see Elsa McGee, our vice president, has raised her hand. Elsa, please feel free to add to the conversation. You can go ahead and unmute.
Thanks, Adobe. Giovanni, I think I saw you testify at one of the hearings, and I'm so glad that you're part of this conversation. Your question is a fantastic one. And honestly, we have not really segmented our approach to students who are first generation versus students from more affluent communities, it's been a one size fits all. And what we're doing today is really the beginning of how we learn how to better target to the needs of students where they are. We've relied largely on communications with high school guidance counselors to speak with students. I think because of the pandemic, it's been the first time that we've even started using platforms like Zoom, where we can touch students, any particular type of student across the state. We would never have had the resources to target whether it's just homeless students or first generation students. We just wouldn't have had the staff to do that. But now we can, hoping again that the resources are there, but it could be in a school setting if students don't have the technology in their homes to participate, that we can really start segmenting the needs of different students. Today, I can say that I went to SUNY Albany in a year when tuition went up mid-year, and I worked part-time during the school year and full-time during the summers to pay for my tuition. And I was fortunate to have a supervisor who gave me as many hours as possible to make up the money that I needed to pay come January to continue at UAlbany. But having gone through that experience, it would not have occurred to me that we should have a video that's in a library that kids can go to talk about how tuition works. And that, right now, SUNY and CUNY have this thing called a rational tuition policy. So tuition can go up $200 every year. So if you're starting as a freshman, know that in 4 years, your tuition is going to be $800 more at least. So it really is, it's really these types of conversations that we need to have more of so that we can truly have resources there for students. My concern is, will students know that it's there? And we can create it, but I think one thing we're going to probably struggle with is how to make sure students know that it's there and remember to go there to look when they need information. And I think, like you said, if the student government associations are the right place to go, I think that's fantastic, but we need to find something at the high school level as well so that kids can go to the resources that we provide, and hopefully we'll provide them plain English so that it gives the right information and you can each understand um, the information that's being presented.
Thank you for that, Elsa. I see Nona has her hand raised. Nona, you can unmute and share as well.
Yes, I just wanted to say one thing on what Elsa was saying of how do we reach the students. But in listening like to what Giovanni was saying, they are student organizations that reach out to students. Am I correct? And
Yes.
maybe we need to tap into those organizations to get the word out to others so that they can pass the word out. Look, if you're having a problem with this, this is a resource, or here's a place to go. But because usually I think if a word comes from their peers, students tend to listen more frequently. So it might be an idea if there are other organizations similar to that, the one that Giovanni is part of, that we could reach out to them and have them be the conduits for some information.
I definitely agree because SUNY SA, they represent all the students within SUNY For example, Kendra, and I'm not sure if anybody else on this call is a part of students. I think Michelle just left, but they are the centralized student leaders of all the entire students. In the same way for me, we have connections to every single student government for every CUNY campus. We meet with them regularly. And if you all have things that you want us to disseminate, if there's a panel or info session, making sure that, hey, this is focused, targeted CUNY students. This is a new change. Please take a look at this on your top board or be on the lookout for that. These are all communications and things that we can disseminate out as well to our peers. And that's how our university works with our student government as well. And I think that's a really great approach to do so, because we're the ones who are always on Zoom calls and working with our other peers on campuses. And it's very important, as much information we can get from HESC, letting them know, even sometimes info sessions. I'll be honest with you, I have to tell students, hey, this HESC info session is happening. They don't know. Even students who receive TOP, they don't know these things are going on. So if there's any way that if students need to be there, this is the information they need to get, we can do our best to shoot it out, reach out to those students, and they can reach out to their peers as well on their specific campuses.
I think that's great. And we are out of time officially. I want to honor you all's time. Amy, you raised your hand. Do you want to quickly share
I was
a
gonna
last
just
point?
quickly say that I agree with like word of mouth, because like my friend had just left her old college to go to another one, and she, even though like she was in Gear Up, she forgot all of it. So the fact of like I learned that from being in Gear Up and still remembered it, it's like now I could have helped her with my knowledge. So like if it's, I know because like funding and stuff, it's hard to get to everyone, but if you educate one particular place like properly and very informally, then that can go a long way.
I agree. So thank you all once again for taking the time to be a part of this conversation this afternoon. I appreciate you all's input, sharing your perspective. It's very valued, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the week. Okay, and be safe out there. I'm going to end the call, and thank you again. Can't say enough. Bye-bye, everyone.